Let tyrants shake their iron rod, and slavery clank her galling chains. We fear them not, we trust in God. New England's God forever reigns.
When God inspired us for the fight.
When God inspired us for the fight, their ranks were broke, their lines were forced, their ships were shattered in our sight, or swiftly driven from our shattered. The foe comes on with haughty stride. Our troops advance with martial noise. Their veterans flee before our youth. Our generals yield to beardless boys. Let the high heavens your songs invite, these spacious fields of brilliant light, where sun and moon and planets roll, and stars that glow from pole to pole. Where sun and moon and planets roll, and stars that glow from pole to pole.
Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Society. I'm Kelly Crocker, one of the ministers here, and today I am joined by my colleague, the Reverend Roger Birchhausen, Drew Collins, Linda Warren, Heather Thorpe, Daniel Carnes, Stephen Gregorius, and the Zappala Voss family, who will be leading us in our chalice lighting. The vision of First Unitarian Society is growing souls, connecting with one another, and embodying our Unitarian Universalist values in our lives, our community, and our world. We're so glad you are with us virtually this morning, and we hope you will be able to join us in our virtual coffee hour immediately following today's service. The information for coffee hour can be found on the homepage of our website, fusmadison.org. I invite you now to join in a moment of silence, to center yourselves and bring yourselves fully into this time and this space together as we join together once again in community.
Our opening words come from Nicole McKay. We gather to remember those who could not grow old, and those forced to grow old long before their time.
We gather to mourn and grieve with one another, all of our losses, the people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been.
We gather to do the hard work of facing the difficult realities of our present and our past, where there is conflict, violence, war, and hatred.
We gather to hold space for silence as we try to make meaning of our history to help us work for peace and justice today.
We gather to rekindle our source of hope for the future by recognizing in one another our shared humanity as we join in a concerted commitment for a better tomorrow.
We gather because we need community to do all of this holy work. I invite you now to light a candle or a chalice in your home as the Zapala Voss family leads us in our chalice lighting.
As we kindle this flame, we honor and remember those who have passed into the mystery. Their brightness lives on in our vision. Their courage lives on in our commitments. And their love continues to bless the world through us.
Please rise in body and or spirit and sing with me hymn number 159, This Is My Song. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Our story today is called The Beautiful Tiger, and it's from Christopher Bice. There once was a beautiful and powerful tiger. One day, she was captured by a mean and cruel man who put her into a cage. The man kept the cage in the jungle not far from his house. Every day, he would bring out a bowl of water and some food for the lonely tiger.
Sometimes the tiger would see her own reflection in the bowl of water and she would say, "My, I must be a beautiful tiger." When the man heard her say this, he would lie and tell her, "No, you are not a beautiful tiger. You are very ugly. You're a pitiful creature." Sadly, the tiger would believe the man.
Some days, after she ate her food, she would walk back and forth in her small cage and feel energy and power moving through her body. And she would say, "My, I must be a powerful tiger." When the man heard her say this, he would lie and tell her, "No, you are weak and puny. You are a pitiful creature." Sadly, the tiger would believe the man.
Then one day, when the man was nowhere around, a lion happened to walk by the cage. The lion saw the tiger inside and spoke to her. "Beautiful and powerful tiger, what are you doing lying about in that cage?" "Do not make fun of me," replied the tiger. "I know that I am neither beautiful nor powerful." "I'm not making fun of you," said the lion. "You are surely the most beautiful and powerful tiger I have ever seen. I'm only surprised to see you lying here when you are clearly strong enough to break out of that cage." "You really think I could break out of here?" asked the tiger. "Quite easily, I should think," replied the lion.
The tiger was not so sure at first. She had been told so many times that she was a weak and pitiful creature. But suddenly, it seemed that she could feel energy and strength moving through her body. She began to pace back and forth in her cage, and then, almost without thought, she leapt against the cage door, and it flew open without any resistance. Once outside, she seemed dazed. "That cage didn't even have a lock on it," she said. "I spent so much of my life stuck in there, and the door wasn't even locked."
The lion looked at her with soft brown eyes and said, "Those kinds of traps don't need locks, for it is lies we believe that keep us in our cages, and it is the truth that sets us free."
I invite you into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering which sustains and strengthens our community within and beyond First Unitarian Society. This week's offering will be shared with Housing Initiatives. For over 25 years, Housing Initiatives has ended homelessness for more than 600 people who suffer from mental illness by providing them with permanent homes and supportive services to help them lead healthier lives. You will see on your screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. You will also see our text to give information there. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
how we remember historical events is complicated. That's because history is complicated. Think for a moment about the Vietnam War. To understand and learn lessons from the complexity of that war, we need to understand the duplicity and the ineptitude of the US government and military leadership, the corruption of the South Vietnamese government, the backdrop of the Cold War, the dynamics of first French and then American colonialism, and the anti-war movement in the United States. Most importantly, we need to grapple with the reality that more than 58,000 American soldiers died there, and the many hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese combatants and civilians who also lost their lives. The wall on the Washington Mall, is a poignant memorial to the American dead. Now imagine a much, 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 much larger wall containing all the names of those in Vietnam who died. The Vietnam War cannot be reduced to a single or a few dimensions. Of course, history is often misremembered to advance contemporary causes. The Lost Cause movement that took off in the early 1900s and persists to this day is an excellent example. The movement intentionally misremembers the Civil War to cover and promote segregation and persecution of Black Americans. The Lost Cause continues to portray the Civil War as a brave struggle by the outmanned states that seceded to preserve states' rights, liberty, and their way of life. Slavery is depicted as something that was incidental to the war, an innocuous institution that actually was good for the enslaved people. All of this, of course, is a vicious, horrible, rotten lie. The Lost Cause is not really about the past. It's about creating a present and a future that continues to devalue and destroy Black lives. And every day now we are witnessing Lost Cause 2.0, intentionally misremembering the January 6th insurrection. This is part of a coordinated effort to shred our democracy and return Donald Trump to power through illegitimate means. And it is related to the original Lost Cause. It also seeks to devalue and destroy Black lives and brown lives and trans lives and other marginal lives. This misremembering is not really about January 6th. It's about, in many ways, the election coming up in 2022 and especially 2024. This is why the vast majority of Republicans in Congress have worked so diligently to thwart independent investigations of the insurrection. Conversely, remembering history more accurately can be a positive and a sobering force in the here and now. I'm really struck by how World War I is remembered in the UK and forgotten here. I was surprised when I lived in the UK for 4 months how deep and palpable World War I is in the collective consciousness. This makes sense when you think about the horrendous human cost of the war. 1 out of 50 people at the start of the war in the UK were killed in the war. In the United States, we lost 1 out of 1,000. So most everyone in the UK knew several soldiers who died in the war. In the United States, most people did not personally know anyone who was killed. Its impact on families and towns here faded relatively quickly, especially when compared with the earlier carnage of the Civil War in the United States or the casualty rate that was much higher in World War II. The impact of World War I on UK families hit me really hard when I visited the Rosalind Hill Unitarian Chapel in London. The minister showed me a plaque on the altar listing church members who were killed in World War I. This was not a huge church, but 21 names appear on that plaque. 21. Can you imagine having 21 people at FUS lose their life in a war? So many families in that congregation experienced such deep grief. Pointing to the plaque, the minister said, and here's the thing, 8 of these people died on the same day in the same battle. This was because regiments were then geographically organized, so when a regiment was decimated in a battle, the loss was concentrated on a particular locale. Our nation's tribute to military veterans, Veterans Day, takes place on November 11th, the same as Remembrance Day in the UK. This day commemorates the armistice that ended World War I. If you asked, I suspect many Americans would probably have no idea why Veterans Day is observed on November 11. In the UK, the searing collective memory of World War I is always viscerally right under the surface. Everybody knows what that day means. The grief and the angst come above the surface in a grand scale on Remembrance Day. For the month preceding, poppies, evoking the poppy fields of Flanders where so many died, are everywhere. So more than 100 years after the war, everyone in the UK stops whatever they're doing and holds silence for 2 minutes at 11 a.m. on November 11th, the 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month. That's when the armistice was signed. I was leading a church service at the moment when I was a sabbatical minister in London when that 11 o'clock hour came up. We stopped almost in mid-sentence and all stood in silence. My nephew was at a Tottenham Spurs football game that day. The stadium was full of people getting ready for a Premier League match. The crowd had been rocking at 10:59 and at 11 o'clock went completely silent. Everybody stood silently. My nephew said that you could have heard a pin drop, and he had never experienced anything like that. Remembrance Day is such a perfect name for that day in the UK. Remembrance is what it's all about, remembering in a full, complex way. So why does all of this matter? Because the lived national nightmare of World War I is present today in the UK as it makes decisions about war. This collective memory does not prevent the UK from fighting stupid wars, think Falkland Wars, for example, but it is a palpable part of the calculus. And this feels less and less true in the United States, where so much glorifies war and where the privileged elite have essentially outsourced war and the casualties of war to the lower classes. I don't think I know anyone who knew anyone who died in Afghanistan or Iraq. I'm in the privileged elite. President Bush targeted me with his message during the Afghan war that be patriotic, go to Disney World, go buy stuff at the mall. My remembrance of the Afghan and Iraq wars will always be distant and muted. All of this compels me to wonder if a fair draft that spreads the burden of war on all, regardless of income, gender identity, sexual orientation, etc., if that would be a deterrent to war. I believe it probably would be. Well, how we remember is also important to denominations and to congregations. This is why I've talked several times this year with you about the complicated history of Unitarian Universalism in relationship to slavery, to racism, and imperialism. It's easy for us to celebrate Theodore Parker's brave and relentless commitment to abolitionism. We name congregations after the Reverend James Reeb, who was killed when he answered Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s call to come to Selma. We remember Unitarians and Universalists who spoke against U.S. imperialism in the Pacific around the turn of the 20th century. But we don't tend to remember all the New England Unitarians who stayed silent about slavery as they got rich off the slave trade. We don't remember Unitarian and Universalist ministers who said no to going to Selma or the congregants who went after their ministers who said yes and heeded Dr. King's call. We don't remember that some Unitarians and Universalists opposed imperialism in the Pacific because they did not want white Americans mixing with brown Hawaiians or Filipinos. We don't remember that many Unitarians and Universalists supported eugenics. We don't remember that numerous Unitarian and Universalist ministers entered and some won American Eugenics Society sermon contests. We have to remember the fullness and the complexity of our Unitarian Universalist history. We have not historically been completely, or arguably mostly, on the right side of a lot of stuff in history. Knowing this, owning this, is essential to our anti-racism, anti-oppression work today. Knowing the fullness of our history enables us to bring some humility to this work, and that is a starting place. I want to go a step further and say that we also need to explore seriously the concept of reparations. Our UU faith has harmed Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color by this shadow side of our history that we have so often ignored. Making reparations includes, but is not limited to, financial restitution. Making reparations is about reckoning with our collective past, naming what happened and wrestling with its implications for us today. It's about stopping practices which continue to marginalize and cause harm, practices which continue the legacy of oppression. It's about supporting Black, Indigenous, and people of color within and beyond Unitarian Universalism who are leading toward a more consistently beloved community. It's about making amends. Ta-Nehisi Coates says it well. What is needed is an airing of family secrets, a settling of old ghosts. What is needed is healing of the American psyche and the banishment of white guilt. What I'm talking about is more than recompense for past injustices, more than a handout of payoff hush money or a reluctant bribe. What I'm talking about is a national reckoning that would lead to spiritual renewal. Such wise words about the deeper meaning of reparations from Coates. To me, this is what Unitarian Universalism as a whole needs to do in the United States. This is what First Unitarian Society in Madison needs to do too. Reckoning with this congregation's past will lead it to spiritual renewal as well as a deeper, fuller, wider commitment to racial justice. So, I encourage you to explore more deeply FUS ministers Kenneth L. Patton's symbolic resignation from the white race and the response of congregants to this. I expect there was a lot of flack that he received. Explore the enormous impact of FUS member Frederick Jackson Turner's paper, The Significance of the Frontier in American History. He read that paper at a meeting of the American Historical Society during the 1893 Chicago's World Fair. The paper was used or misused by supporters of American imperialism in Hawaii, in the Philippines, and elsewhere in the Pacific. It was an intellectual underpinning of that imperialist enterprise. The paper celebrated American exceptionalism, which was a foundation of imperialism. The paper also influenced the myth of the rugged, individualistic, Western American white man that continues to be a cultural icon. I think FUS could learn and grow a lot if it deeply engaged with the impact of Turner's work on American subjugation of the Philippines. What if you did this work and then entered into a relationship with Philippines, Unitarian Universalists, people who, like all people in the Philippines, continue to be impacted by the legacy of American imperialism? What would reparations, as Coates describes reparations, look like? How would it impact what FUS becomes? I am intrigued by this, and alas, I have about run out of time here, and so I am just planting some seeds of reflection. Interim ministry really is all about planting seeds anyway. I hope these seeds may come to fruition here. As I end the spoken reflection today, I want to return to those poppy-filled fields of Flanders, the final resting place of those souls from Rosalind Chapel in London, and so many more people from so many countries, including our own. How we remember them, all the people who died for war. How we remember matters. How we remember all of our history matters. It shapes who we are today. It shapes who we will become.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place and fill the sky. The larks still bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields, in Flanders fields, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up your quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, the poppies grow in Flanders fields, in Flanders fields. We shall not sleep, the poppies grow in In Flanders fields.
Each week we gather with hearts that are heavy with sorrows and hearts that are filled with joy and celebration. We bring all of this here knowing that we are held in love and care. This week we light a candle for Carolyn Sanders and Anne Fleming as they grieve the death of Carolyn's mother, Barbara Sanders. Barbara passed away on May 18th following a short illness. We are grateful she graced this planet for 89 years, and we know she will be deeply missed. We light a candle of well-deserved congratulations to Reverend Roger on receiving his honorary doctorate from Meadville Lombard Theological School. As the Reverend Mark Hicks said in his introduction of Roger, he exemplifies not only being in tune to the hopes and possibilities of professional ministry, but does so in a nuanced way that sets a gold standard for its character and its outcomes. We couldn't agree more. Congratulations, Roger. What a great gift to have you with us this past year. We light a candle of concern and of gratitude for Carol Rowan as she faces serious health challenges. We are sending Carol and Jim our love, our strength, and our hope in the coming days and weeks. Carol and Jim are surrounded by a community of love and support, friends and family helping them on this journey, and they are deeply grateful. Anne asks us to light a candle of bon voyage to Florence Jessup as she leaves First Unitarian Society for new adventures. Florence's professional and personal skills will be a loss for us, but a gain for her new congregation. Peace and much gratitude to you, Florence. We light a candle of loss for Brent West on the death of his grandmother in Mississippi at the age of 84. Lori Schwartz asks us to light a candle for Dante Standiford and to keep him in our prayers as he is missing. May the circumstances of him being found be the least amount of trauma for all involved, especially all the children. Will you join me in a moment of prayer on this Memorial Day weekend? For all who die in war, we lift up our hearts. For all who live in suffering in the aftermath of violence. For all who give their lives in smoke and flame, and for all who go on in their honor. For all who have served our country and our world. For a planet that will find peace. For the young and the innocent, the weary and the war-torn. For those who would pray and those too angry to cry. For all of us, for the many names, for the holy, we lift up our hearts. We lift up our hearts. Blessed be, and amen.
There is a love
Please rise in body and or spirit to sing with us hymn number 323, our closing hymn today, Break Not the Circle.
Our words of benediction come from Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, and to bow to the mystery. May you go in peace.
From a distance, the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. From a distance, the ocean meets the stream, and the eagle takes to flight. From a distance, there is harmony, and it echoes through the land. It's the voice of hope, it's the voice of peace, a distance I can't comprehend what all this fighting is for. From a distance there is harmony, and it echoes through the land. It's the hope of hope, it's the love of life, it's the heart of everyone. It's the hope of hope, it's the love of love. This is a song of everyone. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance.